Neil Orfield here, founder of the Flannelverse. If you don't know me, all you really need to know is that I am obsessed with fantasy sports. I've been playing for decades and I've won a lot of money at it, especially in DFS, where I've won the NFL Millie Maker on DraftKings. And if you remove the Millie Maker, I'd still be up hundreds of thousands of dollars with a dozen wins of $90,000 or more. In the past, I've primarily been a hand builder or an optimizer user, and I still think you can win that way. But in 2025, I think that's playing on hard mode. Most of the best players on the planet do use Sims at this point. So this year, I'm upping my game. I've partnered with Run the Sims, and I look forward to demonstrating how I'm using Run the Sims throughout this NFL season. I hope you'll join me and that we'll win a lot of money together. If you're interested in trying out Run the Sims, you can use promo code Neil to get 10% off your first payment on any of their products. Without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to show you how I'm setting up Run the Sims for the Week 3 NFL main slate on DraftKings. I love the customizability of Run the Sims. I love that you can change at the team level and the player level. You can change the number of points you expect a team to score, the number of plays you expect them to run, and then for individual players, you can change their market share of the receiving work, the rushing work, etc., the touchdown work. All of that is very customizable in Run the Sims, which is an issue I've had in the past with simulation products, is that it's not that customizable. It's hard to get to the players that you like in a lot of Sims products. So I do love that you can customize all of this stuff at Run the Sims, but for my first run, I don't like to do that. So I'm not going to change any of the inputs here on any of the team or player level stuff because I just want to see what the Sims are going to give me before I make any changes. And if you run the Sims within like an hour of lock on Sundays, I actually think you don't need to change any of this stuff. If you're using it correctly, you don't necessarily want to be changing a ton of stuff in the inputs because the Run the Sims team, I think, is a great team. A lot of the best players in the world are leading Run the Sims here. So I think you can just use the inputs that they give you. That's not the way I typically play. I am going to be making changes to the inputs, and I'll show you today some of the inputs that I plan to make for Sunday. But I just wanted to note that, like, if you don't want to be changing the inputs, you can just use the product without making any changes. And I'll show you how I would do that. So starting for me, I played the largest field contest. So again, I'm not changing the inputs for this run, but I would change the settings to match the contest that you're playing. So for me, that's generally going to be the Millie Maker, the Mini Max, a lot of the largest field contests. So I'm going to change these settings at the top here. So the simulator, I'm changing number of lineups from 1,000 to 10,000. Size of contest field. Now this one's important because it depends on the field you're playing. If you're playing in a field of 500, you set it at 500, but I'm going to set it all the way up to 15,000, which is going to pretty closely mimic what the field is going to look like in a contest like the Millie Maker. Even though it's, the Millie Maker will be 10 times this size, this is close enough that it's going to mimic that field pretty well. Number of simulations, I'm going to change to 10,000. And then the payout structure in the contests that I play are very top heavy. So I'm going to change the payout structure to the top heavy option. I'm not going to change anything in the lineups here because I'm trusting the Sims here. They're doing play-by-play Sims, which are then, of course, going to correlate correctly for you. You don't need to force anything like quarterback stacks. Most of my lineups are going to end up being stacked anyway, again, because of that correlation that comes with the play-by-play Sims. But I'm trusting the Sim product to do that correctly for me, so I don't need to tell it to do things like use the full salary or quarterback stack. You can do that if you wanted to change like the salary range to 49,000 to 50,000. I think that's a reasonable thing to do if you just don't want to play any lineups that leave a lot of salary on the table. But again, I'm just trusting the product to give me the best lineups, and they will factor in, the salary to the extent that you should, the ownership to the extent that you should, etc. Because they're following the game by game Sims. They're also doing contest level Sims. So they're going to make lineups and they're going to have those lineups compete against each other, which should factor in ownership correctly. And then the final thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the Shady Portfolio Diversifier. This is made by Shady Advice, another one of the best DFS players on the planet. This is kind of what sets him apart in his DFS play, is that he really diversifies his lineups in a really smart way. He's not just trying to play all of the top EV lineups. He wants to have the top EV portfolio of lineups. So this will give you lineups that are not cannibalizing each other, and it's going to minimize your risk of ruin. So I'm going to set this to 150 lineups. And then that's all I'm going to do before I do the first run, and then I'll go back and change inputs as necessary. So I'm going to click this SimRunner Pro button here to run the Sims. I should note this is going to take a handful of minutes. You need to factor that in when you are running the Sims yourself on Sunday, but I'm going to cut that part out of this video. By the way, I've got some new Flannelverse hats in. They cost a lot of money to make, but I'm really happy with the product. If you like the hats and you'd like to earn one, it's really easy to earn a Flannelverse hat. All you have to do is use the Flannelverse avatar where possible. So, like DraftKings on FanDuel, you can put in that Flannelverse avatar, win $1,000 in DFS or a draft game. Give a social media shout out to myself or Mathology13 or Flannelversity, and then send me your mail-in address. It is that simple. That's all you have to do to win a Flannelverse hat. If you haven't already done so, please do like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season, and I could really use your help with that. I'll also be doing a giveaway if we get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of this weekend. I'll be giving away some Flannelverse hats next week. First set of sims are in, and you'll see that it's a pretty diverse set of lineups at the top here. First lineup is a Dak Prescott double stack with CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson. Second lineup, Bo Nix with Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims. Third lineup and fourth lineup are both Michael Penix. The first one has Darnell Mooney and Drake London. The second one has Darnell Mooney and Kyle Pitts. Kind of cool to see some of the players that I'm really interested in playing here are making it in the top lineups here already. So maybe I won't need to make drastic changes, but I'll take a look at the player exposures and then I'll make adjustments in the inputs to make sure I'm getting to players that I like. But some things that I'm kind of paying attention to here is how much ownership is that Cowboys Bears game going to get? I think that's going to be a somewhat chalky game, but based on ownership projections that I've seen, not like crazy chalky, so it might be worth playing that game. And then I want to see how much ownership Jordan Mason and Kenneth Walker are getting as the backups, or not really backups, but the running backs were benefiting from their teammates being hurt. They're probably going to get more of the work than normally would be expected. They're both pretty reasonably priced. So I'm expecting a lot of ownership going to Mason and Kenneth Walker, both of whom I think are pretty good plays, but it's all pretty ownership dependent. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to take a look at the player exposures tab just to see some of the players at the top here. I'll start at quarterback. So I'm only getting to 3.3%. And actually, let me show you what this stuff looks like. So after you run the sims, you go, it goes to this graded lineups tab, and you'll get your lineups. You can see the EV here on the side. Now, if you don't use the Shady Optimizer, you're just going to get these in order of the top EV lineups. So it's just going to be the top EV at the top, and then it's going to work downward. Here you can see it's not in that order. That's because I'm using the Shady Optimizer tool. So it's going to give me a portfolio of lineups. It's not just going to rank them in order of their EV. It's trying to give lineups that are not going to cannibalize each other. So ultimately, I'm not getting them in the exact order I would otherwise because I'm using the Shady Portfolio Optimizer tool. If you're not using that tool, you're just going to get them in order of EV, and then you can sort them however you want to. Now, in the player exposures tab, again, I'm going to start at quarterback. Only getting to 3.3% Caleb Williams, and you can see this is the amount that I'm getting because I set the Shady Optimizer tool to 150. This Shady exposure column is going to be just those top 150 lineups. So this is the column that I'm looking at here. Caleb Williams, 3.3% exposure. Dak Prescott, 10%. Justin Herbert, 6%. Jalen Hurts, 8%. Drake May, just 1.3%. Mariota, 1.3%. That's kind of interesting also. Mariota only 1.3%, where he is only 4,000. Now, where's Carson Wentz? The other 0.7% Carson Wentz. So we're not getting to a ton of the super cheap quarterbacks here. I think I might want a little bit more, but they both are projected for some ownership. Again, I think I want some of the cheap quarterbacks in my portfolio, so I might up that a little bit. Michael Penix, I'm getting to 14.7%. I really like Michael Penix this week, so I'm happy to be getting to a lot there. At running back, I'm expecting it to be pretty condensed, the ownership this week around some of the top guys, and we're still getting to 38% Kenneth Walker with a projection of 23% ownership. That number might come up a little bit on Kenneth Walker. Jordan Mason, we're only getting to 13.3% at 30% projected ownership. I kind of think he'll come in closer to Kenneth Walker. Maybe not. I guess I think they're both in pretty good spots here at pretty good prices. We'll have to see where the ownership numbers come in there. The top guys, Christian McCaffrey getting a 34%, Bijan Robinson 31%, Jonathan Taylor 19%. I really like all of those plays. Tony Pollard, interesting to see. So he's a player that I really want to be in on this week, but his ownership number is coming in higher here than I've seen it elsewhere. 11% projected ownership. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get squeezed a little bit just because he's not one of the shiny new toys, benefiting from an injury this week. He is benefiting from Tyjae Spears being out, but that's been the case all season. So I'm not sure if the ownership is going to be there or if people are going to kind of forget about Pollard in favor of some of the other running backs in his range. But as of here, we're seeing 11% projected ownership, so not really getting completely forgotten. Javonte just getting to 1.3%. Chase Brown, I'm getting to 5.3%, so pretty close to projected ownership here. Ashton Genty, a player I have some interest in at 3% projected ownership, hasn't really shown it yet, but he's getting the workload there. And I think the Raiders are probably going to bounce back at some point. I wouldn't be surprised to see them bounce back this week. So Genty at 6,700, 3% ownership. I might want to force in a bit of Genty. And I was kind of thinking the same thing for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. He's 5,500, so the price is there, but he's not projected for much ownership at all. Pretty good matchup with the Raiders here. Hasn't really been involved in the passing game so far, but he's kind of an unknown at this point. He's been playing with Austin Eckler, who is an elite pass catcher. It wouldn't be that surprising to see Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt get a little bit more work going forward with Eckler out and a little bit more work in the passing game. So I might want to try to get ahead of that in a nice matchup where he's not going to get any ownership. I think I'm going to try to force a little bit of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt into my lineups. Another player that I like only for the largest field contests, and it's pretty off the wall. I don't want to have a ton of exposure here, but Tyler Algier at 4,700, just given the workload that he typically gets against the Panthers, if Atlanta is able to just take the lead and keep the lead here, I wouldn't be surprised to see Algier getting a lot of work late in the game. And at 4,700, that is pretty appealing to me, where we've got a lot of mid-priced running backs soaking up all of the ownership. And I don't think any of them are like slam dunk guaranteed to put up a ton of fantasy points. So to get a little bit of a price saving on Tyler Algier, again, not a huge priority for me, just because we do have so many pretty strong mid-range running back plays. I don't expect them to all fail, so I don't want to have a ton of Algier, but I think that he's live to score 20 fantasy points here on DraftKings at 4,700. That might be a play that you like. So if I'd like to get to like 2 to 3%. I think Algier just a little bit over the field there. I think you can make a case for Quinshon Judkins also at 5,000. I'm not sure how much I want to do it, but he's listed as a starter. He already got pretty good work last week. I think he's going to get a lot of work. If this were not against the Packers, I would actually be really into Quinshon Judkins here. It's just such a tough matchup that it's hard to get super excited about it. But at 5,000, I think he is in play for large field tournaments. Jackson Smith-Njigba, just one of the best plays on the slate. He is going to get a ton of ownership. You can see here, even at 25% projected ownership, I'm still getting to 25% myself. He's 6,500 here. Wouldn't be that surprising if he's an $8,000 player in a couple weeks. I think he's just in a great spot there in Seattle. He's being fed the ball. Nice matchup here with the Saints. JSN, just an objectively strong play. And if I get close to the field, I think that's about where I want to be. CeeDee Lamb, again, I'm getting to a lot of those Dallas Dak stacks. Rome Odunze, just 9% ownership for me, 18% projected ownership. He's a pretty strong play here. He's pretty chalky, but at 5,300, a little bit mispriced. 9%, I think I'm okay with that. I might want just a little bit more. Happy to get 23% Drake London, a player I really like this week. 5% Justin Jefferson. I might just get to a little bit more of the Vikings, although this is going to be kind of dependent on Christian Darrisaw's status for me. If Darrisaw returns tomorrow, which currently he's questionable, if he ultimately returns, I'm going to be trying to get to a lot more of the Vikings because I think he's pretty impactful for that whole offense. So if he returns, I'm going to try to get to more of both Justin Jefferson and Carson Wentz. If Darrisaw remains out, maybe not as big of a priority for me. 13% George Pickens. Again, we haven't really seen it yet. He scored a touchdown last week. The Dak double stack worked out fine, not great. But I think Pickens is just a good enough receiver that I think one of these weeks he's going to pop off. And this seems like the game environment where it certainly could happen. Ted McMillan, I like him better today than I did yesterday with AJ Terrell out. I think it's a better matchup for Tetairoa McMillan. Maybe the game stays close. Maybe I want him in some of those Atlanta bringbacks. Darnell Mooney here, I'm happy to see that I'm getting to 15% in the Sims. He's a player that I've talked about throughout the weekend that I really like as a really under-owned play here. He's only 4,500. We know that he has the big spike week potential. Haven't really seen it with Michael Penix yet, but the expectation when Penix took over was that it was going to benefit Mooney. Again, we haven't seen it in the 4 games they played together, but this seems like a spot where Mooney could have a big spike week against the Carolina Panthers defense. He's not getting to a ton of ownership and he's only 4,500. So I'm glad to see the Sims are already getting there. I don't need to tell it to do anything. The Sims are already seeming to think that he's a pretty good play. We did just get news right before I started this video that Tucker Kraft is expected to play this weekend, and I'm getting to 10% here at 3% projected ownership. Maybe the ownership comes up, but it's a kind of a gross game environment, Green Bay and Cleveland. At least that's the expectation. So I don't know how much, if I really want more of Tucker Kraft. We also got news today that Tyler Warren is expected to play. He's just a little bit too cheap for the role that he has on the Colts so far this year. He looks really good. I actually think I'm going to force my way to more Brock Bowers that I'm getting to currently. We just saw Tucker Kraft go completely off against this Raiders defense, and it might just be that Tucker Kraft is really good, but Brock Bowers is also really good. So I think if Tucker Kraft can put up as many 20 whatever fantasy points as he put up against the Commanders defense, I think Brock Bowers certainly capable of putting up an even bigger score against that Commanders defense. He actually ran 79% of the routes in the last game for the Raiders. Again, that game, people watched it. It was on national television. Complete mess. The offense just could not get anything going in that game against the Chargers. But this is a little bit of a better matchup, I think, against the Commanders. Bowers a little bit healthier here. And again, he ran 79% of the routes already. I think this could be a pretty big bounce back spot for Bowers, and people don't really want to play him after watching that mess of an offense last time out. So I actually think Bowers is a pretty strong play here. Dallas Goedert, man, I'm getting to 25% at 3% projected ownership. I think that's just because he's way too cheap at 3,700, just clearly a good value at 3,700. And then Trey McBride, I'm only getting 8%. That's because he's projected for 22% ownership. Ferguson, kind of notable because he's in those Dallas stacks. 9% projected ownership. I'm getting to 10%. And then the final player that I wanted to look at here, actually, there's two more. Kyle Pitts, 3,900. I think he's just better this year. He looks better to me than he has in years past. Gets a strong matchup here. Still 4% projected ownership. I'm getting to 14%. I'm glad I'm getting to pretty well over the field there. And then finally, TJ Hawkinson, 5% projected ownership. He's down to 3,800. We haven't seen anything from Hawkinson all year, but I think this is the great bounce back spot for Hawkinson. Playing a Bengals defense that has been terrible against tight ends for as long as I've been alive, I think, at least the last decade or so, they've been pretty terrible against tight ends. I expect that to continue. Now we get Hawkinson at a reduced price tag. And frankly, as much as I love JJ McCarthy and hope that he succeeds in the NFL, so far, he has not been the answer for the Vikings. I think Carson Wentz might actually lift this whole offense. So now we get Carson Wentz in there against this Bengals defense. Hawkinson at just 3,800. I think he's a really strong play. So I'm actually going to force in a little bit more Hawkinson. And defenses, honestly, I rarely do anything to the defenses. I'm just going to let the Sims give me the defenses as they see fit, unless I find a spot that I think is really interesting. But so far, I think the plan is just to let the Sims give me the defenses as they'd like. All right, in this first game, one thing that was notable is I was getting to a lot of Puka Nacua and not much Devontae Adams at all. So far, Adams has actually had a pretty strong target share and in particular touchdown target share, like red zone target share. So at 6,200, I think I'd like to get to a little bit more of Devontae Adams than I am getting to currently. I don't think it's a great matchup, but I'm just going to increase his market share just slightly to try to get to a bit more Devontae Adams. So I am going to click this smart adjust button, which is going to make changes proportionate. So if I change the market share, the receiving market share for Devontae Adams, if you have that smart adjust button on, it's going to change his touchdown market share proportionally. So I'm going to change his receiving market share up to just 1 more percent, 28.4%. And then I'm going to click normalize. So we get to 100% across the team. On the Eagles, I was not getting to much Saquon Barkley. He was pretty good against the Rams last year. It's not a great matchup, but if I'm not going to get to, I think I want to get to more than I am currently. I think it's a little bit tough because we have so many strong mid-range running backs, but I think I want just a little bit more of Saquon Barkley. So I'm going to increase his rushing market share from 57% up to 62%. I did not click the smart adjust button, but I'm going to click normalize. And then I'll just change up his market share a little bit also, his touchdown market share. All right, I think that's good enough. I got to a ton of Dallas Goedert here. I'm not going to do anything to change that. I think I'll probably get to a little bit less after I change some other players. Nothing really stood out to me in the Jets-Tampa game. I think I'm just going to take what the Sims give me. So I'm going to skip that one. The Bengals-Vikings game, I think, could be interesting. Now, this is going to be, again, pretty dependent on Christian Darrisaw's status, how much of the Vikings offense I want to get to. I was getting to a fair amount of Jordan Mason. I think that I want to get to a fair amount. I don't want him in all of my lineups. I don't think he's a like can't fail type play, but I do think that he is a strong play in this matchup at 5,400. For the offense as a whole, I think I'm actually going to move up some of these metrics here. I'm going to make the assumption for right now that Darisaw is going to be in. Obviously, if he ends up being out, I'll probably just leave these numbers as is. But if we make the assumption that Darisaw is in, I would change up some of these numbers to try to get to more of the Vikings. I'm changing the point scored up to 24, pace up to 61. So that's just the number of plays you expect the offense to play. I'm going to leave the rush rate as is, I think. I'm going to click that smart adjust button, and then I'm going to move up TJ Hawkinson's rates just slightly. I mean, I've already moved up all of these numbers, so that might be enough to get to some more Hawkinson. But I'm going to move up his receiving market share to just 21%, see if that's enough to get a little bit of Hawkinson. And then with Jefferson, I'm just going to hope that the changes that I made to the team as a whole are going to be enough to get to a little bit more Jefferson and Carson Wentz. The Steelers-Patriots game, actually kind of an interesting one. The Patriots so far have been just terrible at defending the pass, so I do like DK Metcalf a little bit. In my first run, I got to about 7% Metcalf, and I think I'd like to be closer to the field, so I'm actually just going to move up his receiving market share just slightly. I'm going to make sure, smart adjust is on. I'm just going to move up his receiving market share to 27%. I think that he's a pretty strong play here. I don't think I really need to get to anybody else on the Steelers offense. I think the tight ends are viable, but not priorities for me. On the Patriots side, I think I'm just going to let the Sims give me what they give me. Again, I think this could be a sneaky bounce back spot for the Raiders. So I'm going to try to get to a little bit more in general. I want to get more of Bowers and Genty, maybe a little bit more Geno Smith also, or make sure I get just a little bit of Geno Smith. But I'm going to move up the whole offense just slightly. So I'm going to move the point scored up to 22 and the pace up to 62 to try to get to just a little bit more of the offense in general. I'm also going to move up Ashton Genty's rushing market share to 66%. And I'm going to move up Bowers' market share to 26% target share. And then I'm going to click the normalize button so we get everything to 100%. On the Commander side, I think I'd like to get to some Mariota. He is projected for a fair amount of ownership. He runs a little bit. I think that he's a pretty strong play at 4,000, but also you want to be able to stack up your teams, and he's a little bit of a hard one to know who you want to stack him with. I think for now, I'm just going to leave it as is with Mariota. I do want to get to some more Corey Krosky-Merritt, and I kind of want to make the assumption that maybe he's a little bit more involved in the passing game this week without Eckler. So I'm actually going to move up his receiving market share to 8%. And I'm going to move up his rushing market share because I think he could get more rushing work without Eckler there as well. So I'm going to move that up to 50%. Click normalize. I think that's good enough for a first run. I'm not going to change anything to the Green Bay Cleveland game. It could surprise us, but I'm just not expecting that to be a great fantasy game. Houston Jacksonville, I think I'm largely okay with what I get here. Nico Collins is kind of interesting to me, but I think I'm already getting to a little bit. I think the ownership is probably fair on Nico Collins. Seems like a pretty good spot, but that offensive line is just a complete mess. And the Jaguars might not be as bad of a defense as we thought coming in. So I think for now, I'm just going to leave it as is. Colts Titans, I think, could be a sneaky one. Both of these defenses giving a lot of yards per carry so far this year. So they have not been as good as I think I expected coming in against the run. So I would like to get to some both of Jonathan Taylor and then also, as I mentioned earlier, Tony Pollard, I think is pretty interesting. It really does depend on the ownership. My expectation is that he comes in maybe lower owned than expected. So maybe I'll just do that. I think I'm just going to change his ownership number from 10.81%. I'm going to move that down to 7% because I think he could get squeezed with all of these other running backs in his price range looking a little bit better. So that's going to be my approach, is just moving the ownership down and see if that's enough to get to a little bit more Pollard. I don't know if I need to make any changes to Jonathan Taylor. I'm going to need to check how much I have. Okay, look, my first run, I already have 19% Jonathan Taylor, so I'm good with that number. Falcons Carolina. Again, this is a game that I think I really like the Falcons here. I'm actually going to move them up to 26 points scored and a pace of 65. I think it's just a spot where I want to be overweight in general on the Falcons. I like Bijan. I think the field is going to play Bijan. I do want to get to just a little bit of Tyler Algier. So I'm going to move up his rushing market share just slightly. I'm going to move it up to 40%. I think I'll still get a fair amount of Bijan. Already getting to Mooney, which I love to see. I think I want to get to a little bit more Kyle Pitts, so I'm going to move up his receiving market share to 20%. Click normalize. Again, I already changed at the team level also, so I think just minor changes, probably enough to get to more of the players I like. I do like London also, but I think I'm already going to get to a fair amount. And then on the Panther side, again, we have AJ Terrell is out, which I think could benefit Tedero McMillan. I'm going to move up his receiving market share from 23.7% to 26%, see if that's enough to get to a bit more there. Actually, I'm going to move up the Panthers. I think the whole offense could improve just a little bit. So I'm going to move that to just 20 points scored, pace of 59. So maybe those changes are enough to get to a little bit more of Tedero McMillan. Broncos Chargers, I think, could be a little bit sneaky. This is a game where just the whole game could play up in pace a little bit more than we're expecting. So, good defenses here. So it's one that's a little bit scary. I don't want to go overboard here, but I wouldn't be that mad to get a little bit above weight on this game in general. So I'm going to move the whole game up just slightly. I'm going to move it to 23 points scored for the Broncos, pace of 62. So just increasing the pace and the scoring of the game. Same thing for the Chargers. I'm going to move the point scored to 25, pace up to 62. Maybe that's enough to get some more of this game. We'll see. Saint Seattle. I don't think I need to do anything to the Saint side. Seattle's got a pretty good defense. And I was already getting a fair amount of Kenneth Walker and JSN. Those are the two that I really want to get to on Seattle. So I don't really think I need to make any changes here. I think I'll leave it as is. Of course, as I make other changes to other teams, that is going to, it's all relative. So if I move up the pace of other games, that relatively moves down the pace of this game if I don't change anything. So that is something to keep in mind as you're making changes. Every change you make, if you increase the pace of one game, it is relatively decreasing the pace of all the other games, even if you don't change them. So I do need to keep that in mind. So maybe I'll make just a slight change here because I like the Seattle, some of the Seattle players. Just going to move the points up to 25, pace up to 61. That's why it is like you don't want to make too many changes here. I might be making too many, but this is kind of how I've always approached things. Is I want to make sure I'm getting to the players that I like. So I do make a fair number of changes. Maybe advisable to do only a handful. Arizona, San Francisco, I don't think I'm going to change anything. I think I'll just take what the Sims give me. And finally, Dallas, Chicago. This is just an obviously great spot. This game could really play up in pace. I am happy to get a fair amount of this game. I was already getting a fair amount of CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. This game could really go off. I'm going to move up the point scored to 27 for the Cowboys, 62 pace. I think I'm willing to eat any chalk that comes of it. And right now, it's not actually looking all that chalky. Bears side also, again, these are just two really bad defenses. For the Bears, I'm going to move the point scored up to 26 and the pace to 63. I also specifically like DJ Moore here. He does well against single high coverage. The Cowboys play a lot of single high coverage. I think I wouldn't be surprised to see the ownership separate even more than this for Rome Odunze and DJ Moore, just given how good Rome has been relative to DJ Moore. So I'm actually going to move up DJ Moore a little bit. And I think this is a spot where he could be in for a bounce back. So I'm going to move the market share up to 24 and click normalize. Actually, smart adjust. Now click normalize. All right, I think that's good enough for a second run. So now I'm going to run the Sims again and see what comes out. All right, the second Sim has been run. A lot of the same names at the top here. We've got a Caleb double stack as the top lineup now with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. The lineup does not have any Cowboys bringbacks in that one. We've got Kenneth Walker and Tony Pollard at running back. I moved down Pollard's ownership, so I'll be interested to see how much I'm getting to of Pollard now. Getting Puka in this lineup, Tet McMillan, Brock Bowers, a lot of players that I was hoping to get more of, I got to in this top lineup here. Second lineup, we've got Bo Nix with Troy Franklin and Cortland Sutton now. Last time we had Marvin Mims, I believe, maybe with Sutton. This one has Bijan Robinson and Christian McCaffrey, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, JSN, and Bears defense. Third lineup is Michael Penix, triple with Darnell Mooney, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. Love to see that. Does not have any bringbacks, doesn't have Tet in there. Does have Josh Jacobs, Christian McCaffrey, Puka Nacua, Keenan Allen, and the Jets defense. Just interesting to see how the lineups look a little bit different, not like hugely different than last time, but I made some adjustments to get to more of some players, and I got to more of those players. Actually, interesting to see the fourth lineup. You saw I moved up the whole pace and scoring of that Chargers game, and you can see that in that fourth lineup. Justin Herbert triple stacked with Quentin Johnston, Lad McConkey, and Keenan Allen. A lot of debate who you want to play of the Chargers receivers, and here we're seeing why not all three in the same lineup. That's kind of an interesting one. If we look at the exposures, I don't think I'm going to run another set of sims here. I'm just going to take a look at exposures and go through who maybe I'd want to get to, who I might change if I were to run the sims again. So again, I'll start at quarterback. Get in a 9.3% Justin Herbert. That seems fine. I think I want more than 3.3% Caleb Williams. He's projected for 15% ownership, so that's probably why I'm not getting to a ton of Caleb Williams. That's just such a great game environment that I want to make sure I have exposure to it. But here, I guess I kind of like what the Sims have done here. They're saying, okay, Caleb's getting 15% projected ownership. Dak Prescott's getting 8%. They just kind of flipped it for me. They're giving me 15% Dak, 3% Caleb, which I think is, kind of what you would like to see the Sims do. I still might want more Caleb, but I'd have to give some more thought to that. We see both Bo Nix and Justin Herbert a fair amount after I moved up the pace of that game. Not getting to any Drake May. That's a little bit of a risk there, but that's kind of what I accept. Again, I moved up a lot of other games, didn't change the Patriots at all, so it makes sense that I'm not getting to any Drake May. Get into 23% Michael Penix. I think that's just a result of, first of all, 1% projected ownership. So you have 1% projected ownership combined with the changes that I made, all made Atlanta better. I gave them more points. I gave them a higher pace. So it makes sense that if that's the case, if you're expecting them to score a lot and Penix is coming in low owned, you're just going to get to a ton of Penix. I might have overdone it a little bit. So I think I might move down the pace just a little bit for the Falcons, or actually maybe move up the rush rate is what I would probably do, because again, I like Bijan Robinson and I like a little bit of Tyler Algier. So I might change the rush rate up a little bit for Atlanta to come down a little bit on this 23% Penix, but generally happy to be well over the field there. Still just 1% Marcus Mariota, up to 2% Carson Wentz. Again, if Darisaw is in, I might move up the Vikings a little bit more even, but generally pretty happy with the way things have changed here in ways that make sense, and I like what I'm seeing. Running back, getting to a lot of the best running backs. Surprise, surprise. 23% Christian McCaffrey, 38% Kenneth Walker, 31% Bijan Robinson, 29% Jordan Mason, 15% Jonathan Taylor. Might still want a little bit more Saquon, but I'm up to 4% here. 16% Pollard now, so I'm happy to be above the field there. Again, that's because I moved his ownership down to 7% from the 11% they had it at, and naturally then I get to more of Pollard. Might want a little bit more Chase Brown. I'll have to think about that. He's a little bit expensive, but kind of a fun and not the best matchup with the Vikings, although from a yards per carry standpoint, they have not been great. I think I'm fine with that amount of Chase Brown. Javonte Williams, this is one where if I stack up that game and don't play a ton of Javonte Williams, he could really bite me this weekend, which maybe I'm okay with. But yeah, I have 3% projected for 11% ownership. I might be okay with that. Right at 2%, Ashton Genty. I was trying to get to a little bit more. Didn't get to much more. Maybe I want to move up the Genty shares just a little bit. So maybe I'd increase his, probably just his shares, just his market share is what I would change. I don't think I want to change up the whole game because I think I do also like parts of the Vegas passing game. I'm up to 1% Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I think I'd try to get to still a little bit more of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I think he's an intriguing spot here. Not getting any Judkins. I didn't do anything to get to more Judkins. He's one that I'm going to have to give more thought to. I think I might take a few shots there just because if he's getting an elite workload, and he might be better than we realize at this point. He looked good so far. Maybe he's better than we realize. Maybe he gets 20 touches at 5,000, and this is going to look like a foolish price tag at some point. It's tough because of the Packers matchup, but maybe I'll try to get to just a little bit there. And then Algier, I'm still not getting to any Algier. I think I might try to, again, move up the rush rate of the Falcons because I would like to get to a little bit more of Algier. I like Bijan, and right now I'm just way over the field on the passing game. So maybe I want to even that out a little bit more. Wide receivers, 26% JSN, 28% CeeDee Lamb, 17% Puka, 13% Mike Evans, 7% Justin Jefferson. Again, that's one I think I could move up the Vikings a little bit. 11% Rome Odunze. I'm at 29% Drake London. I'm up to 13% Tedero McMillan after making some adjustments there. Still at 7% DJ Moore. I think I need to move up DJ Moore's rates a little bit more. I'm getting to a higher amount of Romo Dunze than DJ Moore, which I think I'm okay with that, but I might want to flip that a little bit or just increase the amount of DJ Moore and keep Romo Dunze right where he is. I think he's a pretty strong play this weekend. 13% George Pickens looks pretty good. I want to see my Darnell Mooney. 17% Darnell Mooney. I like that. I think he's a really strong play at low ownership this weekend. At tight end, you can see I increased Bauer's rates. I'm up to 18% here. I really like that. I think he's a pretty strong play here. Going to get a little bit overlooked after a disappointing season so far. Up to 22% Kyle Pitts. Actually, I don't remember if that's up. I think that's up. But I was trying to get to more Kyle Pitts. I'm way over the field here. I just think he's better than he has been in the past. Tyler Warren actually won that 3%. I don't love that. He's playing this weekend. His price is just a little bit too low. So maybe I want to get to just a little bit more Tyler Warren. I might need to move down Dallas Goedert's rates just slightly. I mean, he grades out really well because of the low ownership and price tag. But I might want to get just a little bit less of Dallas Goedert. Again, another. I just need to move up the Vikings in general, I think, because I want to get to more of this passing game. I want to get into 1% TJ Hawkinson. I think he's a really strong play this weekend at 3,800 with Carson Wentz in this matchup. I want to make sure I get to more TJ Hawkinson. And I'm at 11% Jake Ferguson. That looks good to me. All right, so that's going to be it for this video. Now, again, usually I would keep running the sims until I have everything exactly how I want them, exposures where I want them. But I'm just going to, stop here for now. Just to give you an idea of what I'm looking at this weekend, what I'm trying to do this weekend. I think this is enough to give you an idea of what I want to do. But of course, you should be playing it how you want to play it. Play the angles that you see, and that's really easy to do in Run the Sims. So again, if you haven't checked it out, you can use promo code Neil to get 10% off your first payment on any of their products. I highly recommend it. I've had some success with it, and I think it's a really cool, fun product to play with. All right, thanks guys. Please do like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I'll catch you next week.